Why did I need to show Lindsey Bell this Hal Hershfield and Julia Carrion clip? You're going to see if she can guess. You're going to see if you can guess too. We talked about pivots in careers, how they happen, how they come along. We talked about the importance of testing and learning and then doing it all over again, because that leads to number 3, adaptability in both your career and in life. And hey, maybe even in death too. Jack forehand, roll some clip.
The beauty is in what you learn between here and there. But then Julia kind of talks through the messiness of what happens in a pivot, right? And so she said the in-between is magic, something like that, right? And I think there can be magic found there, but it can also be littered with stress, anxiety, uncertainty, sleepless nights. Real change happens, in my mind, for 2 reasons, and 2 reasons alone. And that's your back is against the wall. You have no other choice but to make change, or you've just are fed up and you've reached your tipping point, your breaking point, and so you have to change. And so those are not like rosy, glamorous scenarios that drive change. It's really this idea of test and learn. That is going to be so critical in the future. Adaptability is always up there. And I think that's what that is you test and learn. You become adaptable to either the situation you're in or the one you're going to be in the future. We're going through this major shift in the workforce. It's happening in front of our eyes. Some people are experiencing it more significantly than others, but it's this shift to entrepreneurialism. I think that's going to explode. We're going to have a lot more entrepreneurs on our hand in the next 3, 5, definitely 10 years that we've ever had in this country.
You're watching Just Press Record, the audio visual version of Culture Creative, right here on YouTube, brought to you by Epsilon Theory. I'm Matt Zeigler, and this is a special Oh Snap, Guess What I Saw episode. Like I teased, I bring a prior guest back just to show them this clip that I really, really wanted to get their perspective on. Who's my guest today? One of my top 5 bells. Easily, let's run the list. Number 5, the bell on any stock exchange, because it's just a cool thing. Always wondered why whistles are in factories, but bells were on trading floors. If somebody can answer that, drop it in the comments. Number 4, I'm going with the Liberty Bell, because only Philadelphia could celebrate a broken piece of mostly unbreakable metal as a symbol of self-identity. I think that's really good. Ring that bell, Phils. Number 3, Taco Bell. Always as good and awful as I remember it at the same time, which is a magical pairing in and of itself. Number 2, the song If I Were a Bell, and it has to be the Hollywood produced version, the one with Marlon Brando as Sky Masterson and Gene Simmons as Sister Sarah Brown. My wife and I are at least half the YouTube plays on that scene alone if you look it up. And number 1, ding dong, ding dong, ding. It's my nephew. Oh, my nephew Brody actually told me to say this. I was working on your intro last night, and he's staying with us. And he said, I don't know, maybe you could say she's the Lindseyest Lindsey to ever Lindsey. Yes, it's Lindsey Bell. Welcome back to Just Press Record.
I love that. Yeah, I am the Lindseyest ever.
The Lindseyest Lindsey to ever Lindsey.
And I love me some Taco Bell. I'm not going to lie about it.
It's one of those things that it's always a bad idea. And my wife is obsessed with, I think, cheesy gordita crunches. And so it's one of those things like, because it's always like you're at a traffic light and it's just there. And you're like, well, I could eat. It's okay.
Yeah. When a taco is always good. When is a taco not good, right?
There's never a time to not be wanting a taco. All right. So I've got this great Hal Hershfield Julia Carrion clip. We're going to get to that in just a second. But first, you were actually one of my early guests in this show. I feel like you were like, I don't know, episode 3 or 4 or 5. Like you're definitely in the top here. What it's exciting. I mean, you did a TED Talk. You've had some really cool stuff since you came on.
I've done a lot of things. Yes. No, I did a TED Talk. I've just been navigating the labor market, the stock market, tariffs, interest rates, inflation, all the things, and trying to make sense of it. So it's been a little bit of a whirlwind, and here we are now, back at it. Good to be back on with you, though.
Well, always a pleasure to be here and not just throwing comments back and forth on LinkedIn. So we're going to look at this clip. Now, you're familiar with Hal's work. I know you know Julia, or I at least see you in the comments together. Are you familiar with both of them?
Yes, I'm familiar with both of them. Hal's books, Julia as a person, she's awesome.
Even better. So this is more than a good reason to say some nice things about some people. At the end of this clip, you're going to guess what I wrote down on the back of the card, why you think I thought I needed to show you this clip. But for now, let's roll it. Let's see if the audience can guess too. Producer Jack Forehand, roll the clip.
Career-wise, there's certain decisions where like, oh yeah, on some level you can't go back, but like, you also don't know what you don't know what you don't know. And I think you said it really well. Like how did you say it? You don't know what you're going to learn between here and there.
The beauty is in what you learn between here and there. And Hal, you don't know this, and Matt, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and tell you. 3 months ago, I quit a very high-profile job at a major firm. I quit the day I was on the NASDAQ, and I jumped into this menopause wellness company that came up as an opportunity because I went through menopause and had a horrible experience and whatever. I won't go there. I started doing that, and I've been doing it for the last 2 months. And I realized that I absolutely hated the idea of building a direct-to-consumer company. I love the mission. I hated the work. And so just this week, I'm pivoting again. And the number of opportunities that have come up for me and the idea of doing something different, completely different, it's kind of like how I ended up exactly where you said. I'm not going back to like a captive role in a big corporation, but I'm doing something that I never would have had an opportunity to do if I hadn't done the menopause thing in between. And so I just think, if you're open to the possibility of life, then it's going to work out. It's just not going to work out as you thought. And the other thing that's just really important is at the same time, I had turned down what I would have thought was the job of a lifetime at a top 5 investment bank that was recruiting me at the same time I was deciding whether to do the menopause thing or quit corporate. So I never would have joined the menopause thing, and always would have taken the safe bet for the top 5 investment bank. And that would have been the wrong choice. So it all happened, life unfolds for a reason. I'm absolutely sure.
Okay. So I love both where this starts and then, Julia just keeps delivering with taking it. So go ahead, like first reaction, you hear this 2 minutes, top thoughts for you. What goes through your mind?
So my top thought is they talk about pivots, and Hal starts with the romanticized version, like you don't know what you don't know on the other side, which can be an amazing thing on the other side of a pivot. But then Julia kind of talks through the messiness of what happens in a pivot, right? And so she said the in-between is magic, something like that, right? And I think there can be magic found there, but it can also be littered with stress, anxiety, uncertainty, sleepless nights. But I think when I think about this idea of pivoting in our careers, it's really timely, Matt. Like, this is what so many people are going through now. I think the pandemic unleashed this need to find purpose and fulfillment in our jobs and our careers, which opened the mind to the idea of pivots. But I think it's turning into something much more. I think it's going to be this massive trend that is going to explode in the next couple years. So I think it's just really timely, and they had some really interesting things to share with you.
So the Julia comment is literally, the beauty is what you learn between here and there. And I'm thinking about what you just said, because learning pretty much always sucks. Like, let's be honest.
Learning does suck because you're learning something new. It's not easy. It's not usually intuitive to you, right? When the way I think about it, when she said that, something that immediately popped in my head was this. It's that real change happens in my mind for 2 reasons. And 2 reasons alone. And that's your back is against the wall. You have no other choice but to make change. Or you've just are fed up and you've reached your tipping point, your breaking point. And so you have to change. And so those are not like rosy, glamorous scenarios that drive change. There is a third scenario, and that's the crazy people that like thrive on change. That those people do exist. They're very few and far between. That's not most people. But I do think, to Julia's point, it's after you make the change and you succeed in the change, you could find the magic and beauty in the uncertainty and lack of clarity and the pain that got you to that side.
So there's a wonderful Julia-ism inside of this, and this is part of why it's magical to hear her talk with Hal about this too, is she then tells that really raw story about leaving this job, pivoting to the startup that sounds romantic, even though it sounds like a lot of work and she's going to really work really hard at this thing, and then realizes she has to pivot again. That learning is layered. So much like learning sucks. Yeah, learning sucks because it's also, you might have to go through 101, 201, 301, whatever till you get through it. How do you think about those? And I know in the bigger conversation, we refer to them, or we are cautious to refer to them as missteps. But how do you think about that? Like, you think you have the right thing, you're ready to change, and then wall.
Boom. Yeah. No, and I talk about this in my TED Talk, Matt, by the way, for anyone that wants to
Well.
check it out. But it's really, and I know you weren't thinking of that when you asked the question, but it's really this idea of test and learn. That is going to be so critical in the future. I think when you look at the World Economic Forums, and I'm going to get the number wrong, but they put out every year the top skills for this year and then the top skills that are going to be needed by corporations in the next 5 years or something like that. And adaptability is always up there. And I think that's what that is you test and learn, you become adaptable to either the situation you're in or the one you're going to be in the future. And you learn from every experience. The awesome thing about Julia is, yes, she's raw and she's honest and she's open and she's very transparent about what she was going through there. But she learned something in the experience, and she talks about how she used that in thinking about her next move. And so I think that's really so important in the future. And I don't know if you'll let me indulge. I really think why this conversation is so important right now is that we're going through this major shift in the workforce. It's happening in front of our eyes. Some people are experiencing it more significantly than others, but it's this shift to entrepreneurialism. I think that's going to explode. We're going to have a lot more entrepreneurs on our hand in the next 3, 5, definitely 10 years that we've ever had in this country. And I think there's a lot of drivers behind it, but I think it's really the important thing to know is it's being driven by skilled, highly experienced workers. So people call it 35 to 55 years old. And these are people that, like I talked about, when you make a real change, when your back's against the wall, when you've fed up, when you haven't had enough. And these people are experiencing both of that. They're either disengaged in the job that they already have, or they've been laid off and they can't find a job. Or if they do find a job, they're making less money than they were before, or they're maybe making less money than they have in the last several years at the current job that they have. So I think they're in this position where the system's not working for them. And I think Hal has talked about some of this stuff in the past. And so they're going to create real businesses. This is no longer the influencer economy, the content creator economy. Those things are still going to be important. But these are people that are going to create products. They're going to create services that drive the economy in a way. And this is my thinking, is this is going to be a positive. I think it's why the recession that was supposed to come in 2023, 2024, 2025, it still hasn't come despite all the things that we've been through. It's been resistant. The economy's been resistant. The consumer's been resistant because they are tiptoeing their way into entrepreneurialism, bringing income, finding income from other sources. And I think that's just going to proliferate. And I think over time, it makes our economy in general more recession-proof, recession resilient, I guess maybe is the right word. Because people are going to have more income streams. I think companies become a lot leaner. I think the exact opposite of what's happened over the last, 100 years since America was created is, the cost for companies, their employee costs has become their largest expense, right? I think that's going to start to go the other way. It's going to become a much smaller expense, partially because of AI productivity, which isn't my main thesis. I think it's more that they're going to be able to operate with these entrepreneurs without paying for benefits, overhead, and things like that. So their margins are going to continue to expand, which, by the way, in our world supports the stock market. So I don't know. That's like kind of where my thinking is that we are in this explosion of entrepreneurs.
there's two pieces inside of this that I want to pull these tracks apart. The first is the whole knowledge worker thing, or the people that are in that 35 to 55-year-old demographic, who are people that are gainfully employed in some type of knowledge work. And I say gainfully employed, meaning they're well compensated for something that mostly involves answering a lot of emails all day. So they're in some version of that space. And then they go, I want to do something real or more fulfilling or whatever else. And they make that choice. And the counter to that might be, if you're not a knowledge worker, if you're a level down, you might go, I'm going to pick up the extra shift on Uber, or I'm going to pick up the extra, whatever, that type of thing. You can tell me how this distorts all the numbers because you've thought way too much about this too. But the flip side of that is people like Julia. We don't need to analyze her too deeply on this, but I mean, we can. It's fine.
She won't mind.
She won't mind. It's just me and you and our closest friends on the internet. So like, she had that other top 5 investment bank job lined up. And she said no to that because she wanted to experiment with some other stuff. And then even when she started to experiment, she didn't go back to the top 5 investment bank job. That's a different type of knowledge worker intention flex that I feel like, have we seen this before, or is this new?
No, I think this is absolutely new. I think, I mentioned creator influencer economy. I meant knowledge worker economy too. This is like this next stage that I think that we're starting to go through here in 2025 is completely different. These are real businesses. Some of it will be knowledge businesses. It'll be, salespeople that are, instead of working inside the company, working for themselves and, acting as an intermediary between several different companies. It will be people that create new products, that innovate. But it's going to be this test and learn phase. And look, I still think, even though I'm sitting here saying this, right, what I will tell you is, I know without a doubt, is most Americans prefer a W-2 over a 1099 all day long, right? It's it might not be the security that it used to be, but there's some sense of safety there. It's a steady paycheck, at least for the days and weeks and years that you're there. You do have healthcare, you have retirement, you have different things. So it takes a level of stress off of you. So I do think that the W-2 will always be tempting. I just don't know that the opportunities are going to be out there. And at some point, people run out of savings. People run out of, whatever cushion they have moving back in with mom and dad as a 50-year-old. I don't know if that's a possibility, but maybe you move in with your kids at that point. So I just think that they're not, it's the gig economy. The way this started in the 2000s, it was the gig economy. Was literally plug and pay. Pick up your phone, you open the app, you put your info in. I want to drive an Uber today. I want to make some extra money. Easy peasy. You don't have to do anything very difficult, but all of a sudden you're making a little extra money, which feels nice, patting the cushions. This is something entirely different. You're going to have to do the work. It's not going to be necessarily easy, but also there's never been a better time in the history of America to be an entrepreneur, to live on your own and earn your own. And so I think that the opportunity now is better than ever. And it is easier to start an LLC, start a website, create some content to support the sales of whatever you're driving, whatever you're trying to put out into the world. So I don't know. I feel like I'm going on a tangent now.
No, but
I need to bring me back.
I'm going to bring you back with this. I think this is what I feel is different, but I'm hearing this in a very well thought out form. It's been 30 years of laying the groundwork for that to be acceptable and achievable as a person creating or making this shift. You couldn't do this. There's not really a scenario. Don't know why I'm taking it here, but this is what I was like, where can I track this back to in time? And I'm thinking of You Got Mail, and I'm thinking of them trading those emails and basically the Fox or whatever the fake Barnes and Noble is destroying the corner bookstore. Shout out to the original movie it's based on, the little box shop around the corner. But the whole idea of Meg Ryan's character couldn't turn around in that movie and now go, I'm going to start my indie pivot side hustle, whatever thing.
Right. Exactly.
But now we have a whole other level of framework that's been put into place where it's not just going to go out and drive an Uber or not just going to do something else. It's a different type of knowledge worker, business owner, and creator. And maybe, to your point, we're starting to just create more actual things by these people. Because Julia goes, I don't need the big 5 investment bank job, but between myself and my family situation, maybe there's 2 or 3 subcategories of businesses that I can start now.
Or even one, if you find your, what's that theory? Like you find your like 100, like die
A
hard,
thousand true fans, the Kevin
thousand
Kelly.
true fans. Yes, that's exactly what it is. I knew you would know. And that's all you need to live a reasonable life. And maybe that's what it is. We're no longer as a society chasing more, better, fancier. We realize what is enough. And you can live very well off of your true 1,000 fans. And so I think it could be more something like that. So it doesn't have to be this overwhelming thing that you have to find, if that makes sense.
Not only does it make sense, I think it matches up with, shout out to Dave Noddig, because he and I have talked about this probably way too much, is that really lines up with the younger side of Gen X, the millennials and the Zoomers, like that aesthetic of actually thinking through this enough term and go, how do I get to enough inside of some scope that I actually really appreciate? Like that smaller community ideal is actually a generational difference that also wasn't there. Another thing Meg Ryan's character is not thinking of in that way in that movie, right?
Well, and the other thing too, but that Meg Ryan's character wasn't thinking of because it wasn't the time, was that this explosion of entrepreneurs means there's going to be an explosion of fragmentation. And so another example, the way to think about it really is, I always use, this is my example, is the flavored water, sparkling water in the grocery store, the aisle. I mean, how humongous is the section and the space that is dedicated to that? In 2015, it was up to 2015, I guess, it was LaCroix. LaCroix was like the flavored sparkling water that you're buying. You didn't have much choice. They didn't have much competition. Then fast forward 1, 2, 3 years, and the number of brands that are offering this has proliferated. And now, I mean, I can't even count. And it's not just, there's national brands that are owned by Pepsi and Coca-Cola. There's, the private label brands, Kirkland, shout out to Costco. I love Costco and their flavored water. But then there's like the regional brands. And that's what I think is going to happen with business, is there will be the big national brands. There'll be, medium-sized like companies, people, entrepreneurs that are servicing them. But then you're going to get like regional flavors too, because there's going to be so many choices. You're going to go with the guy or the gal that you know or think you know, maybe through the internet. So I think it's just going to be a mass fragmentation, and we kind of get back to like where we started this whole thing.
I'm very intrigued by that. And I think part of it is, and correct me on this, is your sense of identity with these things. And even the sense of identity of being like, you love Costco. There's actually there was a Costco where we used to live. There's not a Costco where we currently live. And it's a funny thing because I was a Costco person. Now I'm not a Costco person. Now I am a Wegmans person. And if you know, you know. So inside of that though, like those are fragmented parts of our identity too. And there's something really interesting in that, like smaller community fragmented identities and being comfortable with feeling that purpose inside of, I really enjoyed the Costco trip, for example. What is that? How do you make of that and how we look for meaning from work and choices?
Well, and that's where I think community is becoming so important. And you're starting to see it more anywhere you go, is just there companies, businesses, or communities that can drive community interaction, I think are going to be what thrive and survive in this next leg of our economy. And so I think that that's just going to be so important. As I think about, I work with Better Investing, a nonprofit organization where I'm the chair on the board, and we're educating people about how to invest and pick individual securities. The reason that what made us successful in the 1950s when we got started was we started out with investment clubs. And so Peter Lynch even called us out in one of his books,
What Works on Wall Street, or one of the other ones?
No, one of the
There's so
other
many
ones.
of them. That's all right.
Just left my mind. But anyway, the reason it worked is like an investment club is a community. You're meeting with your pals and you're talking about something that matters to you. It's been more difficult to do that in this day and age, as things are more virtual. But it doesn't have to be. But I think meeting together, seeing people face to face is going to be like very critical in the future. I think now, actually.
The future is now, Lindsey.
Yeah.
The future is now. All right. It's time to play this game. We're going to see best guess. Why do you think I felt like I needed to show you this clip? What do you think I have on the back of my card here?
Because I'm like obsessed with the changing dynamics in the labor market, and I just love a good pivot story. I don't.
We all love a good pivot story, and partly for the gory details, and we like somebody else's pivot, not our own pivot, right? Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, so what I wrote down was I put down mission and work are inseparable and important, but so tricky to track and unpack. And I know we kind of got to it at the end, that mission and work part, because this is a huge theme of your TED Talk. This is a huge theme of your work, and that you keep coming back to is if you're not chasing some identity and purpose inside of this, if we're not figuring out how to solve from that, both from the top down and the bottom up at the same time, there's no good outcome if we don't solve for that in both directions, right?
No, absolutely. Like, I think you summarized it perfectly. Like, if this is as much about the whole as it is about the individual. And so I think we are still searching for purpose in the work that we do. But I think we need to, part of that purpose historically has been in the community of the people around us that we work with. And so if we're going to be working with less people in the future, we need to find community in different ways.
Cannot say that better. Lindsey, if people want to find you, bug you on the internet, where should they look you up these days?
Check me out on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find me.
Best place to find you. And the TED Talk too. Say the name of the TED Talk. We'll put a link to it.
The name of the TED Talk is How to Take Ownership of Your Career.
Fantastic. Lindsey Bell, thanks for coming back on Just Press Record. We'll have you back soon, okay?
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us. Like, comment, and hey, subscribe below to Cultish Creative on YouTube if you haven't already. As the good compliance people want me to remind you, Matt Zeigler, that's me, is a managing director at Sunpoint Investments. The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Sunpoint Investments. No information on this podcast should be construed as investment advice. Securities discussed in the podcast may be holdings of clients of Sunpoint Investments. I hope you've been entertained. I hope you found this useful. I hope you talk to a professional before you try any of this stuff at home. And most of all, I hope you've subscribed. Be nice to each other out there. And don't forget, head over to cultishcreative.com and let's make curiosity a habit together. And I'm out.